My earliest memories feel like faded pictures with a sad, blue tint. Dad was like a figure in an old photo, gone before I turned 6. Mom, Nancy, was like a storm cloud over our small apartment. Sometimes, she'd scrub the kitchen floor, talking about starting over, and other times, she'd pull me into a tight hug, so tight it was hard to breathe. These hugs, though rare, were the only moments of affection I longed for. Most of the time, I was like a shadow following her around. She was always busy, her face full of worry. When that worry got worse, she'd leave me with Mrs. Charles, our neighbor downstairs. When Mom came back, the air felt tense, like electricity. She'd pat my hair with a sigh, more out of habit than love. But every now and then, I'd catch a small smile, and I'd cling to that warmth. Then Jerry came into our lives. He had kind eyes that crinkled when he laughed. Unlike Mom, he was calm and gentle. He treated me with a kindness I wasn't used to. One day, after a rough time at school with Laura Brown and her friends, I sat crying on the couch, asking, why do they always pick on me? The loneliness in my chest felt heavy. Jerry knelt down and told me softly, they pick on you because they feel insecure. They want to feel powerful by making others feel small. His words were like a balm to my heart, giving me a small bit of hope. But hope in my world was fragile, like a butterfly easily crushed. Then Rachel was born, a tiny bundle of joy, with eyes just like Mom's. She came into our lives a year later. I wasn't the center of attention anymore. All the love and warmth seemed to disappear, replaced by cold indifference. Mom's attention shifted completely to Rachel, leaving me to figure out the confusing world of childhood on my own. At 15, I was awkward, with braces, frizzy hair, and a huge knot of insecurity in my stomach. That's when Mom's negativity toward me really took root. Take picture day at school, for example. Mom took the day off work to fix Rachel's pigtails and dress her in the perfect sparkly outfit. When it was my turn, she sighed and muttered, nothing decent in here, as she looked through my closet. On picture day, Rachel looked like a little princess, while I looked like a messy dandelion next to her sunflower. Mom gushed over Rachel's picture, while mine got barely a glance and a grunt. Jerry, with his kind heart, tried to be a positive voice in my life. He would take me shopping and help me find clothes that fit and made me feel good. One day, after a rough time with Mom, I found myself clinging to him for comfort. Dad, I accidentally called him. He froze, pain flashing across his face. Mom appeared in the doorway, her eyes angry. You have one father, Mary, she hissed, her words sharp. And believe me, he deserves you. Her words stung like a slap. Jerry, sensing the tension, awkwardly ruffled my hair. It's okay, he mumbled. No, it's not, I choked out, tears in my eyes. Rachel, who had been watching with a smug look, suddenly added, Mary's been bad again, Daddy. She took my candy without asking. At 18, I was dealing with first crushes, awkward dances, and constant anxiety. Dating in my house was like walking through a minefield. Mom had a way of ruining any chance at romance before it even started. Take Adam, for example. He was tall, funny, and had a smile that could melt ice. After weeks of nervous texting and stolen glances, I finally got the courage to ask him out. He said yes, and I was excited. But then I started dreading the thought of him meeting Mom. On the night of our date, Mom made sure Rachel's bedtime story lasted forever. When Adam finally arrived, looking nervous but sweet, Mom greeted him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes and said, Mary never cleans her room. She said it so casually, like she was talking about the weather. You might find socks and pizza boxes under that mountain of clothes. My face turned bright red with embarrassment. Adam gave a nervous laugh, but the awkward silence felt like it lasted forever. The rest of the night was a disaster. Mom kept making mean comments about my weight, my music taste, and even a college I wanted to go to. By the end of the night, Adam practically ran out the door, leaving me feeling like a deflated balloon. It wasn't just Adam. The same thing happened with a few other guys after that. Every time I brought someone home, Mom would throw in sneaky insults and backhanded compliments. My confidence dropped, and any chance at a relationship fizzled out fast, like a firecracker in the rain. At 19, it was time for college applications, goodbyes, and my strong need to break free from my childhood. Senior year was all about my plan to escape mom's negativity. College applications were my way out. I spent hours at the kitchen table, pouring my heart into those pages. Every acceptance letter felt like a little piece of hope breaking through the wall Mom had built around me. Of course, she didn't make it easy. When I told her I got accepted to a university across the state, she sighed and said, "Oh, Mary, so far away. How will we ever see each other?" Her words were full of guilt, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. "We can video chat, Mom," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Besides, there are airplanes." Jerry, as always, was supportive.
He was so happy for me.
"This is amazing, Mary," he said, pulling me into a big hug. "I'm so proud of you." His words felt like a warm blanket on a cold day. He may not have been my dad by blood, but he felt more like a father than the man who left us so long ago. College was a fresh start. Surrounded by people who didn't know anything about my family, I finally felt free. I grew in so many ways, challenging myself with my studies and building real, supportive friendships. By 28, I was living the adult life, managing endless spreadsheets and enjoying a tiny apartment that felt huge compared to my small childhood room. Life was mostly good. My job as an economist kept me busy, and Larry, my boyfriend of a few years, brought happiness and laughter into my life. One evening, over Thai takeout and a bottle of wine, Larry surprised me. With that goofy grin I loved, he said, "I think it's time we met each other's parents." My stomach sank. Meeting Larry's family had been easy. They lived in a cozy house with a backyard that smelled like fresh grass. They welcomed me with open arms. His mom, Carolyn, gave me so many hugs, and his dad, Joshua, spent the evening making jokes that had me laughing so hard I snorted. They were warm, funny, and really wanted to get to know me. It felt normal, a word I never used for family dinners in my past. But the idea of Larry meeting my family? That filled me with dread. How could I explain the years of emotional neglect, the constant insults, and the overwhelming negativity? I told him everything. The fights, the tears, how Mom had worn down my self-esteem for years. Rachel hadn't changed either, now an expert at pushing all the right buttons. Larry listened quietly, his hand resting on mine. "Mary," he said, looking at me seriously, "I'm marrying you, not your family. They're the baggage, but you're the prize." His words were like a healing balm, a declaration of love that began to wash away years of doubt. Maybe, just maybe, I could finally have the kind of happy family I always deserved, one filled with love, acceptance, and laughter. My stomach was in knots as I dialed Jerry's number. This was the day I'd tell him about Larry and our engagement. "Hey, Mary. What's up?" Jerry's familiar voice boomed through the phone. I took a deep breath and said, "There's something I need to tell you." I told him everything about Larry, the proposal, and the upcoming wedding. There was a brief, comfortable silence on the other end, and then Jerry burst into a genuine laugh. "Mary, that's fantastic. I'm so happy for you both." His words felt like a warm wave, easing some of my anxiety. "Listen," he continued, "you've got to bring him over for dinner. Let me meet the guy who finally got you." Larry, always supportive, was totally on board. So, a few weeks later, we pulled up to my childhood home, a place that stirred up both nostalgia and dread. Mom answered the door, her face lighting up in surprise. "Mary, you came to visit. And who's this handsome guy?" "Mom," I said, smiling nervously, "this is Larry, my fiancé." I gave a forced smile and said, "This is Larry." He stepped forward and shook Mom's hand, saying, "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Turner." Mom beamed and shook his hand a little too eagerly. "The pleasure's all mine, dear." "So, Larry, what do you do for a living?" Larry, not picking up on the hidden meaning in her question, launched into a detailed explanation of his work as a director at a big company. Jerry, always smooth, jumped in with jokes and stories to keep things light. Meanwhile, Rachel wasn't about to be left out. Throughout dinner, she kept batting her eyelashes at Larry, interrupting our conversations with questions about his job and hobbies. Mom, of course, doted on everything Rachel said, completely ignoring the passive-aggressive comments she kept throwing at me. Mary, honey, she'd say in a fake sweet voice, you should really take some fashion tips from Rachel. That dress you're wearing, it's not exactly flattering. Larry, thankfully, didn't seem to catch on, but I knew exactly what Mom was doing, trying to make me feel insecure in front of my fiancé. The whole dinner felt like a twisted play, with me constantly reminded that I wasn't good enough, not pretty enough, not successful enough. By the time dessert arrived, I was ready to leave. As soon as it was polite, we made our excuses and left. Once we were in the car, Larry let out a long sigh. Your mom, she's quite the character, isn't she? He said, with a hint of humor in his voice. Yeah, I muttered, feeling drained.
She can be?
He squeezed my hand gently and said, but hey, we made it through dinner, right?
He was right.
We had. Despite Mom's negativity hanging in the air, holding Larry's hand filled me with strength. This was my future, one I was building with him, not with my dysfunctional family. Later, as we curled up on the couch, flipping through wedding magazines, we dreamed about a small, intimate ceremony at a charming vineyard, surrounded by people who loved and supported us. It was perfect. But the next morning, that dream shattered. My phone buzzed, and I saw Larry's name. The usual cheerful ringtone felt ominous. Mary, he said, his voice tight with anger and disbelief. We have a problem. My stomach dropped. What's wrong? I asked. He took a deep breath. Your mom. The blood drained from my face. What did she do this time? I asked, bracing myself. Larry explained, and each word felt like a punch. Somehow, my mom, the master manipulator, had gotten hold of his work phone number. But instead of a friendly call, she unleashed a tirade that would make a sailor blush. In her twisted version of reality, I was the definition of failure, ugly, boring, and socially awkward. And that wasn't all. She even dragged my dad into it, using his abandonment years ago as some kind of weapon. But the worst part? She actually suggested that Larry leave me and go after Rachel instead, saying my younger sister was the real catch, beautiful and smart. Anger surged through me like hot lava.
How dare she?
How dare she try to ruin my happiness again? Larry, bless him, was just as furious, but instead of letting it boil over, he came up with an unexpected plan, risky, bold, and thrilling. We expose her, he said, jaw clenched. We set a trap. The plan was simple but daring. Larry would call Mom back, pretend to be swayed by her words, and arrange a meeting to discuss her ridiculous idea. The goal was to record the whole conversation. Larry made the call, his voice calm and convincing. Mom, completely unaware of what was coming, happily agreed to meet him for coffee. A nervous laugh escaped me. This was it. Operation Momzilla Takedown was a go. I didn't know how it would turn out, but one thing was clear. I wasn't letting Mom control my future anymore. The tables were turning, and this time, I was ready to fight back. I decided to attend their meeting, even though the idea of facing Mom, disguised as someone else, gave me chills. But my anger at her constant negativity and her attempt to ruin my happiness was stronger than my nerves. Wearing comfy jeans and an old t-shirt, I slipped into a corner booth at a busy cafe across from where they were meeting. Thick black glasses completed my disguise, making me just another face in the crowd. My stomach flipped as I watched Mom confidently strut into the cafe, a smug smile on her face. She spotted Larry at the table in a private room, and her smile grew even wider. This was it. Operation Momzilla Takedown was in full swing. Larry, being tech-savvy, had already discreetly turned on the recorder on his phone. And I, sitting close enough to hear everything, listened to their conversation. It started off casual enough, with Larry playing the part of the interested listener. Then, ignoring any sense of shame, Mom launched into her tirade, completely unaware of the trap she'd just walked into. You know, Larry, Mom began, leaning in like she was sharing a secret, between you and me, Mary just isn't wife material. My heart sank. The woman who was supposed to love and support me was trash-talking me to a complete stranger. She's, well, a bit simple, Mom continued, her voice pretending to sound caring, and not very pretty either, if you know what I mean. Larry, to his credit, kept a calm face, nodding and making neutral comments. Inside, I knew he had to be furious. But Mom wasn't done. She lowered her voice and said, "Rachel, though now that's a girl with potential. She's smart, beautiful, and knows how to handle herself in society. The nerve of it." Rachel, with her shallow personality and zero work ethic, was apparently Mom's idea of elegance and intelligence. The conversation was a lesson in manipulation and lies. Mom, blinded by her own delusions, even admitted that she never loved my stepdad and only married him for his money. She had no shame. Finally, after what felt like forever, Mom stood up, looking smug. "Well, Larry, it was lovely meeting you. Think about what I said," she purred, patting his hand with her perfectly manicured nails. As she walked out of the cafe, I could only shake my head in disbelief. "So, what now?" I asked, my voice tight. Larry pulled me into a hug, giving me comfort in the middle of all the chaos. "Now," he said firmly, "we expose her." The tension was thick as I walked into my childhood home that weekend. Mom greeted me with a huge smile, full of smugness that made my skin crawl. "Mary, honey, you won't believe it," she gushed, blurting out her news before I could even say hello. "What's that, Mom?" I asked, already preparing myself for bad news. "Larry," she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction, "has come to his senses. He's leaving you and marrying Rachel." My heart skipped a beat, but I forced a smile. "That's great, Mom. Really happy for them." My stepdad, always a bit clueless, cleared his throat. "Leaving her? I thought they were getting married." Rachel, lounging on the couch like a spoiled cat, laughed. "Apparently not, Dad. Mary just wasn't good enough for him." Shocker. I ignored her, focusing on Mom's triumphant face. It was showtime. "Actually, Mom," I said, my voice steady, "Larry's right here." At that moment, Larry walked in, a sly grin on his face. The room went silent, and everyone gasped. "Hi, everyone," he said with a smile. "Just in time for a little family fun." He pulled out his phone and hit play. The room went completely silent as Mom's voice, dripping with malice, filled the air. The entire conversation from the cafe played, her rant about me, her praise for Rachel, and the shocking confession about my stepdad. With every word, the color drained from Mom's face. My stepdad went pale, his mouth hanging open in disbelief. As for Rachel, her confident attitude quickly disappeared, replaced by fear and a nervous whimper. When the recording ended, the silence was unbearable. Then my stepdad exploded. "You lying snake," he yelled, his voice shaking with anger. "You married me for money? All these years?" For the first time in my life, Mom looked completely lost. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they were nothing compared to the storm on my stepdad's face. "I want a divorce," he declared, his voice thick with rage. "Get a lawyer." The room erupted into chaos. Mom and Rachel burst into tears, their cries a mess of misery and self-pity. Larry, bless him, looked incredibly uncomfortable, like a fish caught in a hurricane. But amidst the chaos, I felt oddly calm. The truth, ugly and painful, was finally out. Years of manipulation, lies, and hurt had all come spilling out, tearing down the illusion of our broken family. The next few weeks were a blur. My stepdad's heartbroken sobs and Rachel's icy glares when we crossed paths at the store became the norm. Mom, the cause of all this, disappeared from social media and withdrew from the world. As for me, I felt strangely empty. The anger that had driven me for so long was gone, leaving behind a hollow space. One sunny afternoon, Larry found me curled up on the couch, absent-mindedly flipping through wedding magazines that now felt like relics of another time. "Hey," he said softly, concern in his voice. "You okay?" I gave him a weak smile. "Yeah, just thinking. Everything feels so different." He sat down next to me and pulled me into a hug. "It is different," he said, "but different can be good. It's a chance to start fresh, you know?" His words felt like a gentle push in the right direction. Maybe he was right. Maybe the empty space left by Mom could be filled with something new, something better. A spark lit up inside me. I grinned mischievously. "So," I said, "what do you say we do something crazy?" Larry raised an eyebrow. "Crazy like what?" "How about a road trip?" I suggested, a grin spreading across my face. Just us, a map, and the open road. No plans, no deadlines, just pure adventure. "You had me at road trip," Larry said with a smile. And just like that, our plans changed. The carefully planned vineyard wedding transformed into a spontaneous cross-country adventure. We packed up an old camper van with essentials, lots of snacks, a great playlist, and a worn copy of On the Road. With no set destination, we hit the road, ready for new experiences and memories. Fast forward a year, and Larry and I stood at the altar, exchanging vows under a canopy of beautiful flowers. It wasn't the big, fancy ceremony I had once imagined, but it was perfect. Instead of a critical mom, it was my stepdad, recently divorced and estranged from Rachel, who walked me down the aisle. There were tears in his eyes, a mix of pride and regret, and as he squeezed my hand, he whispered, "Kiddo, I always knew you'd find your happily ever after." After the wedding, life settled into a happy routine. Larry and I built a life full of love, laughter, and the occasional road trip adventure. My stepdad became a regular visitor, sharing stories from his travels and dropping hints about wanting to be a grandpa. With a laugh, I'd reply, "Don't worry, you'll be the best grandpa ever."